welcome back, S'mores, to Beyond the Campfire. Happy New Year. That's right. Yesterday was January the 1st, and this is January the 2nd. So you're officially watching our first episode, and what is it, 2026? And yeah, that's right. We have been almost doing this for 2 years. This is technically our third year going into this after March. But yeah, welcome back, guys. We got a really great episode again. We're going to another conspiracy where Steven did the little ChatGPT thing. I like it. I think we might have some rare episodes every now and then that are kind of structured like this because I think it's really interesting. And yeah, make sure you guys follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Beyond Campfire. Make sure you guys like, comment, and subscribe. And make sure you guys go check out our Patreon because we've got a lot of good content coming out there. For the new year. We're definitely going to buckle down and get a lot more done there. And guess what? We have returning. Our campfire's back.
Hey, there we go. Yeah.
So I got a little campfire over here with me. And yeah, what are we talking? What conspiracy are we talking about today, Steve?
Yeah. So today we are talking about the death of Pope John Paul the First. Pope John Paul II, obviously, he became a very, very famous pope. Maybe probably the most famous pope of the 20th century. But yeah, he would never have come to power if his predecessor, Pope John Paul the First, did not die. Now, here's the thing about Pope John Paul the First. He was elected as the new pope, and 33 days later, he dies. Not 33 weeks later, not 33 years later. It's no 33 days. So one of the shortest reigning popes in history. Certainly the shortest reigning pope in modern history.
Yeah.
But yeah, how does a pope just die like that? There's definitely questions. Some of the circumstances of his death, like what the Vatican was reporting, was unusual. Some of the people around him were engaged in some unusual activities. And so we are going to tell the story through ChatGPT. Most of it is going to be factual. Where things are not factual, I'll kind of explain in between chapters. But we're going to tell the story of Pope John Paul I's death through the eyes of me and Will being American cops in Italy at the time. And I think we have about, what, six or so chapters?
Yeah.
Uh,
Like our usual
to take a
chapters.
few minutes each. And as we go chapter by chapter, hopefully it's a fun way for you guys to get the information. Kind of at the end of each chapter, I'll tell you what's fiction and what's not. But um, yeah, so this happened in the 70s, late 70s. Vatican II, the council had happened. The Pope that had kind of presided over that council, he's gone now. So, we have this new Pope. And yeah, just a couple of quick things I'll say before we actually start reading this story. So, no Pope John Paul I. Know about the Vatican Bank, which no longer exists, at least not in the form it does in the 70s. And we have the banker, one of the bankers of the Vatican Bank. So we'll talk about some of those things and why it led to some of the conspiracy theories. So,
Yeah.
Will, any preliminaries you think we should talk about before we get into our story?
Well, this was supposed to be an opening to Steven's podcast, but he dropped the ball on that one.
I do have a couple. I do have a few days, so this still could be that. We'll
Yeah.
see.
Yeah,
So
we'll see.
we'll make it work. I'll see if I can record something tonight. So
Oh, I thought we were filming on the 30th. I thought this was already. No, right, that's right. That's right. Never mind. I'm thinking ahead. I'm thinking more of the future. Anyways.
okay, so okay, with all those preliminaries in place, our story is me and Will being cops in the 70s. Good time to be a cop, and
Yeah, because you could do the crack.
I know, and so we go to Rome, and we're just there, and the Pope dies. So with that story, uh, I'll do my voice. Will do his voice,
And
uh,
all the other people.
and you'll do other people. So, okay, cool. Oh yes, I'll be narrator, and my voice will be himself and other people. Okay, so here we go. Chapter 1, Bells in the Morning. The bells started before the coffee had finished brewing. Will leaned back in the narrow cafe chair, boots crossed at the ankle, cowboy hat tipped low, as if Italy itself were a stage set built for his amusement. Outside, Rome moved slowly. Shopkeepers lifting metal shutters, scooters winding awake, sunlight spilling across stone like it had for 2,000 years. Will took a sip and grimaced.
Yep,
He muttered, setting the cup down.
that confirms it. Baptists are right, Catholics are wrong, and this coffee, it proves it.
Stephen smiled without looking up from his notebook. He was already scribbling street names, times, little observations. Habit, cup habit. The kind that didn't shut off just because you were technically on vacation. Will, Stephen said calmly, they're brothers and sisters in Christ. Will scoffed.
Brothers who pray to saints, sisters who think a guy in Rome can talk straight to God on speed dial.
Stephen finally looked up, dark eyes steady. You really want to have that conversation in Rome? Will rolled his eyes.
Relax, I'm not arresting the Pope.
That was when the wailing started. It cut through the square like a blade, raw, uncontrollable, ancient. A woman had fallen to her knees near the fountain, hands clutching her chest, her cries echoing off the stone buildings. People froze. A man crossed himself. Another dropped a basket of bread. Stephen was on his feet instantly. She's saying, Il Santo Padre Immorto, he said quietly. Will frowned.
The Pope is dead.
Stephen nodded slowly, disbelief creeping into his voice. That's that's impossible. He was just elected 33 days ago. Sirens followed. Italian police cars, sliding into the square, uniforms sharp, faces tight. An officer barked orders in rapid Italian, eyes scanning the crowd like he expected chaos to erupt. Then the officer spotted Will and Stephen. Two men, calm, observant, posturong for tourists. The officer approached fast, switching to broken English.
You police see?
Will flashed his badge without thinking.
United States, visiting.
The officer's jaw tightened with relief.
Dinner, please. We need help. Something is wrong.
Stephen glanced once toward St. Peter's in the distance, the dome rising impossibly calm against the sky. Yeah, Stephen said softly. Something is. The bells kept ringing, and Rome, old Rome, seemed to hold its breath.
Mamma mia, the Pope is dead.
Um, so that's chapter 1. Obviously, me and Will being there is fictional. Obviously, Italian police asking American cops for help is fictional. But
I think also, from what I read, there was no panic. Nobody was really panicking.
yeah, so people hearing about the Pope dying would be sad.
Yeah.
So I think ChatGPT probably overdid the reactions a little bit, but you know, yeah, I mean, people crossing themselves or crying that the Pope died would not have been too unusual. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, police cars coming in and saying like, "Oh, the Pope's dead." It's like, yeah, that probably is not happening, right? So, okay, with those clarifications in mind, the Pope did die, right? So he
Yep.
died. He did die 33 days after he had been elected. So, that was definitely weird. But yeah, obviously, a Pope dies that quickly, and as we get into chapter 2, we'll find out more about why his death was kind of suspicious. But yeah, the Pope
Yeah.
really did die. It was 33 days after. So, all right, we'll go ahead and get into chapter 2. Chapter 2, Whispers in Marble Halls. Rome did not mourn quietly. By midday, the city hummed with rumors, the way it hummed with traffic, layered, overlapping, impossible to trace a single source. Will and Stephen moved through it like they always did, listening more than talking, letting people reveal what they thought they knew. A Swiss guard spoke first, off the record, eyes darting.
Heart,
He said, tapping his chest.
that is what they say.
A priest near the colonnade shook his head when asked.
No, no, too sudden. He was smiling yesterday.
A journalist, chain smoking near the news van, leaned in close.
People don't just die in the Vatican. Not like this.
Then a man selling newspapers lowered his voice to a hiss.
Murder.
He said flatly.
You didn't hear it from me, but the money is everywhere. Vatican Bank. Always the bank.
Stephen paused mid-step. What bank? The man glanced around, then muttered a name like it was a curse.
Robert Calivier.
Will caught it immediately. The way the name landed. The way it stuck. They walked in silence for a block.
You hear that?
Will finally said.
That wasn't superstition. That was fear.
Stephen nodded. Or speculation,
Or both.
Will replied. By afternoon, the official word reached them. No autopsy. Will stopped dead in his tracks.
No autopsy.
He repeated.
You're telling me the most powerful religious leader on earth drops dead after 33 days. Nobody checks?
Stephen kept his voice level. It's standard. Papal tradition. The body belongs to the church. Will laughed once, sharp,
Uh,
humorless.
Funny how tradition always shows up right when answers would be uh, inconvenient.
Stephen turned to face him. Careful,
Careful of what?
Will shot back.
You hear the rumors, you hear the money talk, you hear the same name pop up twice in one day, and now they won't even look.
Stephen exhaled slowly. Not everything hidden is a cover up,
And not everything sacred is clean.
Will said. They stood there, tourists flowing around them, Rome unchanged. Fountains running, pigeons scattering, history layered thick enough to bury secrets whole. Will adjusted his hat.
I don't buy coincidences.
He said.
And I don't really buy institutions that ask for blind faith when questions get uncomfortable.
Stephen studied him for a long moment, then nodded once. All right, he said. We ask questions quietly.
About who?
Stephen met his eyes. Roberto Calvi. The bells rang again, slower now. And somewhere, beneath the marble and incense, money moved, secrets whispered, and the truth waited to see who was brave enough to knock.
All right. So,
Chapter 3, or that's chapter 2, rather. Yep, go ahead.
so chapter 2, we're finding out about this banker dude.
Yeah, so Roberto Calvi, he's real. He was a banker at the time. We're going to talk a lot more about him in the following chapter, so I won't say too much about him now. But yeah, he had some associations with Vatican Bank. That part is true. He, was kind of around when the Pope died, so that was, well, okay, let me not be misleading. So I'm not saying he, like, did the murder or anything. If Pope John Paul I was murdered, because that's really the question, right? Was Pope John Paul I murdered? And we don't really know, right? The official report to this day in the year 2025 is that he died of natural causes. Obviously, that there are some suspicious circumstances that we're going to get into. No autopsy, that's real, right? So
Ridiculous.
that's changed now, but that was standard practice at the time. So that was not performed. So we don't actually know his cause of death because or at least we don't know it through the medical procedure of autopsy. Uh, we kind of know it through other things that they might have done. But yeah, they say, hey, it was a heart attack. He died of natural causes. Nothing suspicious, right?
Heart attack
I
again.
would, I would be suspicious, right? But
Well, yeah, I mean, like you got like a very powerful figure who, and probably we'll find out a little bit more maybe why they would have wanted to kill him if he was killed by somebody. But you've got a powerful figure and dies of a heart attack, no autopsy, gets a little fishy.
sure, yeah. And so I would say there's a lot of reasons why there's conspiracy theories around Pope John Paul I's death, but this is one of the biggest reasons why. And again, even though it was standard procedure at that time to not have an autopsy, and I think because of Pope John Paul I's death, they changed that rule later on. But yeah, I mean that rule and them not doing it definitely fueled the conspiracy theories that we came to know later on. So
Oh yeah.
okay, well, let's do chapter 3 called God's Banker, and we're going to learn more about Roberto Calvi. So here we go. Chapter 3, God's Banker. They found him in a place that felt intentional, quiet, polished, respectable. Roberto Calvi sat across from them in a modest office just off a narrow Roman street, hands folded neatly, posture calm in a way only powerful men ever seem to manage. A crucifix hung behind him, tasteful, unobtrusive. Everything about the room said, "Trust me,"
I'm a simple man.
Calvi said softly.
I love God. I love His church. Yes, I sometimes handle financial matters. That's all.
Will leaned back, studying him like a poker table.
Funny thing about this all,
Will said, reaching into his jacket. He slid a folded newspaper across the desk. The headline stared up at Calvi, God's Banker. Will raised an eyebrow.
care to explain the nickname?
For the first time, Calvi hesitated.
The media it exaggerates.
He said quickly.
They enjoy drama. Funny,
Will replied, tapping the paper.
because drama usually follows money.
Calvi stood abruptly.
I'm sorry, I must go.
Will moved just as fast, hand reaching out, and stopped cold when a firm grip closed around his wrist. A uniformed national policeman stood between them, eyes hard, voice clipped.
You are American police.
He said in broken English.
This is Italy. You must watch yourself.
Will yanked his arm free, anger burning through his chest.
You're hiding something.
He shouted as Calvi disappeared down the hall. The officer didn't respond. Will stormed out into the street, jaw clenched, boots striking stone harder than necessary. Stephen caught up to him a block later, breath quick, holding a newspaper of his own. Will, he said, look. Will stopped. Stephen pointed to a small column buried deep inside. The Vatican changed the initial report. Will's eyes scanned it fast. Time of death adjusted, who found him corrected, what he was doing when he was found, everything rewritten. Will laughed bitterly.
You don't rewrite facts unless you're scared of them.
Stephen shook his head. Or unless someone made mistakes and tried to fix them.
Mistakes?
Will snapped.
They changed everything, Stephen. That's not clarification. That's damage control.
Stephen met his gaze, steady as ever. And it's also possible that a rushed institution corrected bad information. No poison, no evidence, no proof. Will turned away, his fist clenched.
That's how cover ups survive by calling suspicion imagination.
The airport announcement echoed overhead hours later. Their flight home was boarding. Rome faded beneath the clouds as the plane lifted, St. Peter's dome shrinking into the haze. Will stared out the window, jaw tight.
They're hiding something.
He said quietly. Stephen folded the newspaper and set it aside. Or they're human. Neither convinced the other. And the mystery followed them across the ocean.
Dun dun dun. So that was chapter 3, right? Yep. So this
Chapter 3.
banker guy.
Yeah, so Roberto Calvi was a banker for Vatican Bank. He handled a lot of financials for the Vatican Bank. We don't know the full extent of everything he did, but he was called so this part is true. He was called God's banker by newspapers, so he was kind of known as being one of the leading people handling the Vatican's financials. So that part is true. Obviously, our conversation with him is fake, right? So
Yeah.
um, the this part is true. So the Vatican did change its report. So when they first announced the Pope's death, they said he died at this time, was found as by this person, and that he was praying when he died. Later on, they changed the report and they said, oh, actually, he was found at this time. He was found by this other guy, and he wasn't praying, he was reading. And it's just like, whoa, wait a second.
What? That's suspicious. So
Yeah,
first off,
that's weird, right?
the Pope dies mysteriously, and then they changed the report on how he was found and everything. On top of that, there's no autopsy. This is fishy.
This is fishy. And, it's like changing reports, no autopsy. And is it possible they just made a mistake and were correcting it? Sure. But the Pope has died, right? How,
Yeah,
how do
you
you
don't
keep,
get the mistakes wrong.
yeah, how do you get details wrong unless you're changing something? So, I don't know. It's suspicious. Now, at this point, well, who would have a motive to kill the Pope? Well, we're going to get more into Roberto Calvi and a group that he was a part of,
Ooh.
right? And, you know, there's not a ton of evidence connecting his group and the murder of the Pope, but there definitely is at least motive. And based on, well, I don't want to get too ahead of myself. We'll get into some of Roberto Calvi's actions in the years following the Pope's death because it does start to make things look very, very suspicious.
Yeah.
So, all right, you ready to do chapter 4?
Yes, sir.
All right, let's do chapter 4, The Call from Rome. The phone rang after midnight.
Ring, ring, ring.
Will was halfway through pouring bourbon when Stephen picked up, listened, and went still. It's it's for you, Stephen said quietly, handing the receiver to Will. From Rome. Will frowned and took it.
Yo, this is Will. What's up?
A pause, then a voice, calm, deliberate, unmistakably burdened by history.
Good evening.
The voice said,
This is Carol. What to go? Pope John Paul II.
why are you making him sound like that?
I thought it was a woman.
No, that's Pope John Paul.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, it
yeah,
said this is Carol, and I'm like, Carol's a woman's name.
yeah, no, his name is his real name is sounds feminine, but yeah, no, that's the Pope you're talking to.
Catholics. All right, I got this.
Okay. Okay,
Good
you're good. You're
evening.
good. Okay. So, well, now you know it's the Pope. So,
Now I know it's the Pope.
okay. Will froze. Stephen's eyes widened.
I wanted to thank you
The Pope continued.
for your concern and your diligence. Your intentions were noted.
Will recovered quickly. too quickly.
We respect your holiness. People don't just die after 33 days and leave behind a trail of contradictions. There's money involved. There's no.
The Pope interrupted gently. The word was not sharp, it was final.
My predecessor is with God.
John Paul II said.
It is not my role or yours to speculate. My calling now is humility, not suspicion, shepherding, not chasing shadows.
Sorry, pause it real quick.
You good? Oh,
Uh,
no, you're good. Yeah, it's just
Will Will opened his mouth again.
you are a police officer.
The Pope continued calmly.
I am a servant of the church. We each must stay within our vocation.
The line went dead. Will stared at the phone. Stephen was already moving, rifling through papers on the table. Will, look at this. He held up a British newspaper, fresh ink, bold headline circled in pen. Calvi linked to Masonic order, the Black Friars. Will's jaw tightened.
Masons.
Will muttered.
Secret oaths, financial power, political reach.
Stephen nodded. If this is true, it's not nothing. Will grabbed his jacket.
Rome shut its doors? Fine.
Stephen looked up. You're thinking London. Will met his eyes.
If Calvi won't talk in Italy, maybe he will wear the Vatican's shadows a little shorter.
Stephen hesitated only a moment. Then we followed the trail, he said. The tickets were booked before dawn, and somewhere across the Atlantic, secrets waited. Older than borders, quieter than bells, and far more dangerous than either of them wanted to admit.
I think the real conspiracy here is why would someone name their son Carol?
yeah, no, it's a little confusing, but
Yeah, I was like, who's Carol?
yeah. So popes, if you guys don't know this, popes take on new names when they become pope.
Yeah.
So the Pope's name, Pope John Paul II, not the first, Pope John Paul II. Yeah, his name was Carol, and then when he became Pope, he became Pope John Paul II.
Pope Carol.
Yeah.
Baskin. Killed the other Pope, whacked him. The Tigers be snacking.
So Roberto Calvi was part of the Masons, right? He was part of Masonic lodge that called themselves the Black Friars. How deeply involved he was with them, we don't actually know for sure, but that was a group that he was confirmed to be a part of. Pope John Paul II, that phone call obviously fake. The Pope's not going to call random American policemen to thank them for being intentional.
I don't think he sounds like Dracula either.
Yeah. But yeah, he did become Pope afterward. There actually, I looked into it. There's not really any conspiracy theories that Pope John Paul II killed Pope John Paul I to become Pope because
it's all with the banker, isn't it?
Yeah, it's all basically with the banker because
no, go ahead.
Yeah, because with kings, right? When a king dies, there's a clear line of succession. So the king's son or the king's uncle or somebody would have incentive to kill the king because they would know they're going to become king. But popes don't work that way. Popes are elected, and unless like a pope had a strong feeling that he would be chosen, like it doesn't make any sense to kill the pope so that you can become pope because
unless you get all buddy with the Cardinals.
Maybe so. So, not really too much evidence. Usually, actually, popes have been usually picked because they're somewhat unknown. Usually the cardinal bishops don't really like to pick the popular guys. because they want to like avoid things like that. So like even the current Pope today, right? Pope Leo the 14th, an American guy. He was not even in any conversations online. They kind of just pick someone random. Pope Francis, same thing. So
Isn't it
maybe
crazy to think that like they could
maybe
have
Pope
chosen?
John Paul II was involved in that, but it's extremely unlikely. So
They could have chosen Shia LaBeouf to be the next pope.
they could have actually, yeah, any baptized Catholic, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, look at that.
Well, because he's becoming a monk and stuff, so it would have been funny if he became pope.
That would have been really funny. That would have been really, really funny. So, but yeah, Calvi being in the Masonic Order, Calvi being in London, all of that is true. I forgot to mention this in the story, but this is about 4 years after the Pope has died, so I should have mentioned that in the story. This is making it seem like it's
Like we left Rome and then got the phone call and then
right, yeah, but yeah, I should have noted this in the story, but this is 4 years later now. So the Pope has died, and 4 years later, Calvi is in London, and we're going to London now. So
yeah,
the ChatGPT story didn't include that, but like in real life, Calvi being in London, this takes place 4 years after Pope John Paul I's death. Chapter 5, I think, is going to kind of explain why, or basically why people start
yeah,
to be very, very suspicious of Calvi. So, all right, are we ready to do? We are doing chapter 5 now, right?
yeah.
Okay, here we go. Chapter 5. So, we're in London 4 years after the Pope has died. So, here we go. Chapter 5. Oh, lost my place. So, yeah, we go to London and we're tracking down Calvi because we want to talk to him again. So,
Yeah. Talk to him.
talk to him. Okay. Chapter 5. Beneath the Bridge. London greeted them with rain. Not the cinematic kind. No thunder, no drama. Just a steady gray drizzle that soaked coats and moods alike. Will and Stephen worked their way through addresses, banks, hotels, offices. Each lead collapsed into nothing. Roberto Calvi had vanished. They were crossing a narrow street near Blackfriars Bridge when the man stepped out of the shadow of a stone archway. Black coat, clerical cut, but not clerical cop. His eyes were sharp, measuring.
Pip pip cheerio. You should stop looking.
The man said calmly. Will's hand drifted instinctively toward his jacket.
We didn't ask for advice.
The man smiled thinly.
Robert Calvia is a cursed man. Those who follow him only follow ruin.
Stephen studied him. Who are you?
A brother.
The man replied.
That is all you need to know.
Then softer, almost kind.
Leave London.
He was gone before Will could respond. Will exhaled sharply.
That wasn't ominous at all.
They didn't leave. Calvi's apartment was dark when they entered. Too dark for someone who supposedly was still alive. Stephen checked the rooms. Will moved straight to the desk. What do we have? Stephen asked. Will held up a folded letter, hands suddenly unsteady.
It's addressed to the Pope.
Stephen read over his shoulder. The words felt heavier than the paper could justify. The letter read, "The collapse of the Vatican Bank would provoke a catastrophe of unimaginable proportions, in which the Church will suffer the gravest damage." The letter was addressed to Pope John Paul II. Stephen swallowed. That's not a man bragging,
That's a man warning.
Will said. They kept digging. Accounts, shell companies, false ledgers, offshore transfers, a web of corruption so dense it felt intentional, engineered. Will leaned back slowly.
What if John Paul first was going to expose this?
Stephen looked at him carefully. What if Calvi was corrupt, and the Pope died of natural causes, and we're just stitching two tragedies together because it feels cleaner rather than randomness? Will shook his head.
Or what if the bank and the Blackfriars made sure the Pope never got the chance?
Stephen didn't answer. They found Calvi just before dawn, under the bridge, hanging. The Thames River moved silently beneath him. Will stood frozen.
We should have done something. After that man warned us.
Stephen shook his head slowly. There's no proof. None. This could be a suicide. It could be a hit, Masonic or not. Sirens approached. Stephen looked once more at Calvi's body. Some mysteries don't want to be solved. Will stared at the water, jaw tight.
And some truths die before they ever testify.
The rain kept falling, and London kept its secrets. All right, that's the end of chapter 5. So we got one more chapter after this.
So, was it actually found out that there was like all this corruption in the Vatican Bank?
Okay, so yeah, the things that are true. Roberto Calvo did write a letter to John Paul II that said the quote I just said. So he said, hey, if the Vatican Bank fails, it will bring the gravest damage to the church. He wrote this about a week before he died. So, actually, chapter 6 is going to be interesting too. So, chapter 6, something really interesting happens the day after Roberto Calvi's hanging. We'll talk about that in chapter 6. But Roberto Calvi was found hanging. I should have mentioned this in chapter 5, but when he's found, there's 5 bricks in his pocket. There's about 14,000 US dollars, but in like 3 different currencies, and it's just weird. It's really, really weird.
That is weird.
So,
what kind of guy hangs himself with bricks in his pocket?
Yeah. It doesn't make a lot of sense. I forgot to add this detail. He was hung at Blackfriars Bridge. Remember the Masonic group he was
Yeah,
part of?
yeah.
They're called the Blackfriars. Yeah, so he
Oh,
died in a place where the Blackfriars were heavily active.
Man, this is weird.
The story didn't explain it, but like the guy that talked to us and said, "Hey, leave London." I'm implying that was a Blackfriar, so he was part of the Masonic Lodge. So
that's wild. Like. Okay, so you're telling me like, just to piece it all together. So there was where the bank could have collapsed, and there's a possibility that the Pope John Paul I had knowledge of this and might have done something, thus resulting in maybe the bank killing him.
Yes, so
the Masons doing it.
So the part about us funding corruption, that's real. So Roberto Calvi was extremely corrupt. He was doing a lot of like very shady things with money and the Vatican Bank. So there's a lot of deep financial corruption. The theory is Pope John Paul I was finding out about it, and he was going to come in and he was going to clean house. He was going to like kick out all the corrupt officials. He was going to like clean up the bank and make it proper. And Roberto Calvi and the Blackfriars and other Vatican officials kind of liked being corrupt, and so they killed him so that he couldn't say anything. That's the conspiracy theory, right?
That I could see, because like we've got proof of corruption, we've got proof of this, and then all of a sudden, like Calvi, leaves and heads to London, and then he's found mysteriously dead. So it's almost like Calvi could have been the one behind the murder, and they're just tying up loose ends.
Exactly. The official report is a suicide to this day. However, many people believe that Calvi was actually murdered. We'll kind of get into that into chapter 6. But now, earlier in the story, I said, well, he died mysteriously. They changed reports. But who did it? What was the motive? Now it's like, oh, well, here's who possibly could have done it. And here's
Okay,
possibly the motive.
I'm going to ask a question that goes back a little ways to kind of, I guess, before we get into chapter 6.
Sure.
The first initial report, who found the body of Pope John?
Oh, who found it first? Yeah, let's see.
Because that might play a key role in this.
I think it was just like a priest. But let's see.
Oh.
Yeah, it would have been somebody who was found. It was found by a nun. Okay. Body was first discovered by Sister Vincenza Taffarel, a nun serving as his housekeeper on the morning of September 29, 1978, after he didn't retrieve his coffee. But initial Vatican reports misidentified the discoverer as a priest and varied details, leading to the change in reports.
Sure, buddy. Sure. Whatever you say, report. I know what you're covering up. I know what you're hiding.
So, okay, yeah. So initially it was said that a priest had found him, but then they changed it to a nun who was his housekeeper. So,
Gotcha.
Hey, some of the priests were corrupt too. So,
Yeah.
could it have actually been a priest? But
Dude, the whole Catholic Church is corrupt. What you talking about?
So, that's the official report. Actually, they made another change in 2022. So in 2022, they released another report saying that it was this nun, and it was this other nun too, who confirmed that the first nun was actually there.
Okay,
So I'm
you
just
should have
like,
just
that's new.
you should have just left well alone. Now you're just making it more suspicious.
Right? Yeah.
These darn
And
Catholics,
that's 2022. Man. So like that's recent that they added that detail.
Like in that, man, Catholics and changing reports, man. They do it with the Bible and they do it with murder.
And their official reason is they made some mistakes, so that they were just correcting mistakes.
Yeah, you're correcting your mistakes 50 years later. What?
It is suspicious. It is suspicious for sure. So
yeah.
Let's get to chapter 6, because an event's about to happen the day after Calvi's death, which is pretty wild. So, all right, chapter 6. All right, and this is the final chapter, and we'll kind of talk about whether we believe it or not. Chapter 6, final chapter, questions that refuse to die. The headline broke the next morning. Vatican Bank collapses. Okay, I'm just going to pause there quickly. So yeah, the day after Calvi dies, the bank does collapse. So
well, your grandma's not getting out of purgatory. Sorry, y'all.
All right, okay. Story continues. Stephen stared at the paper, coffee cooling untouched in his hand. That answers part of it, he said quietly. Calvi warned them. The collapse happens. That looks like suicide. Will didn't look convinced.
Or
Will replied,
it looks like a man who knew too much and became inconvenient the moment the truth caught up.
Stephen glanced up. You think he was silenced?
I think,
Will said slowly,
Calvi didn't kill himself.
Stephen blinked. That's a strong claim. Will folded the paper.
And I think we're missing something bigger, something buried. We need the Vatican files.
Stephen stared at him for a moment, then leaned back, an odd look crossing his face. It hasn't happened yet, Stephen said, almost softly, but I can feel it. Someday, a controversial man is going to be found dead. The report will say suicide, others will say murder, and there'll be a list of files. Files everyone wants, that never get released. Will frowned.
Files about what?
Stephen shrugged. Power, corruption, governments, maybe intelligence agencies. A pause. Maybe even an island.
Oh, my word.
Will snorted.
You're getting prophetic on me now.
Just pattern recognition, Stephen replied. Years passed. Questions never settled. New reports emerged. Quiet ones. Technical ones. The kind buried in footnotes in foreign language journals. Injuries on Calvi's neck, inconsistent with hanging. 5 bricks found in his pockets, untouched by his fingerprints. His family insisting, unwavering, that he was murdered. Will dropped a report onto the table one evening.
This doesn't read like suicide.
Stephen read it carefully, then what nodded once. No, it doesn't. They sat in silence.
And the Pope,
Will asked.
natural causes or something else.
Stephen exhaled. I don't know. Will leaned back, staring at the ceiling.
Funny thing about truth, sometimes it dies quietly. Sometimes it gets buried under tradition, money, and fear.
Stephen folded the paper. And sometimes, he said softly, it waits. They never reopened the case, but neither man ever closed it. Some mysteries don't end, they just learn how to survive unanswered.
Wow.
So that's the final chapter. I'm going to fill in some details. So, Pope John Paul I died in 1978. Roberto Calvi was found dead in 1982. The official report is that it was a suicide, although his family to this day says it was not a suicide, he was murdered. In the 90s, so about a decade after his death, they did a new investigation into his death, and the people that examined his body, so they exhumed it, right? They got his body out of the grave and looked at it again. And those doctors that looked at it in the 90s said, yeah, the injuries on his neck, inconsistent with hanging. The bricks found in his pocket did not have his fingerprints, implying that somebody put those bricks into his pockets. And it's just suspicious. Like, that's all we ever hear.
It's all suspicious, man. It's like, I don't know. It's just, it's, to me, it's very suspicious because, like I said, it's like like with the Pope, right? There's this corruption we find out about the bank and all of this, and then Pope mysteriously dies, and like they just say natural causes. There's no autopsy report. Don't give me the bull crap, you know, whatever. Usually with the murder or like some type of death like this, you would probably do an autopsy to make sure you're right, but there's no autopsy. It's swept under the rug, and it's just said died of natural causes. And then years later, you know, we find out that what's his name wrote a letter to, the Vatican,
Yep,
like,
Roberto.
hey, bank's gonna fail. Calvi writes a letter, and then he mysteriously dies, and he's got bricks in his pocket. The neck wounds are wrong. It's all weird. I don't know I don't know who to think. Like, could Calvi had been by, like, could the Pope have almost revealed all this corruption about Calvi, the bank, maybe even more into the Vatican, and revealed all this truth, and maybe they wanted him dead and wanted somebody better in there that probably could do a better job and would, be hush hush about it all. And then Calvi was fixing to, when he sent that letter, they were very like, okay, he might expose us. The Vatican took him out. Like, is the Vatican killing people? I
Yeah,
don't know.
we don't know. So the official report is Pope John Paul I died of natural causes. Roberto Calvi was a corrupt man, but his corruption had nothing to do with the church. And he killed
Yeah,
himself, presumably because he felt bad about the corruption. That's the official story.
that's bull.
However, as we noted, there are some holes in it. There are some things that are suspicious, and um, I I know in the story I made myself sound like very skeptical, but actually in real life, I'm actually skeptical myself
Yeah,
too.
like, what the heck's going on?
Yeah, I I don't know how much of the Vatican knew about the corruption or things like that. I don't know if Pope John Paul I actually was about to crack down on Roberto Calvi and the Vatican Bank, but I do think his death was very suspicious. I do think Roberto Calvi's deaths were very suspicious. Whether those two deaths are linked together, I'm not 100% sure about that, but I do think that both deaths were suspicious, and I think there's more than the
Yeah,
official reports are telling us. So that's kind of where I'm at.
yeah. I think I'm the same way where I'm like, I think there's a lot of suspicions, and you guys, like, obviously on this podcast, you've come to learn, like, Steve and I are two sides of a different coin, of the same coin. You know, Steven's on one side where he prefers the facts, he prefers the truth, he prefers, like, if, and I'm on the other side where I'm like, well, a lot of times the facts are wrong, the truth is wrong, there's lies, there's corruption, there's no telling, and so I think that's just, you see the two different sides. And I think that's what makes this podcast great is you got like two different angles of two different people looking at it, a more logical approach and a more conspiracy approach. And I think with this one though, I think we're both coming out with a conspiracy because I think, I don't know how, like you said, there's no telling how deep the Vatican knew of the corruption, but it's kind of a question of, okay, who is benefiting from these falsified ledgers and all this? Who's making this extra money? Could the Vatican been making, some money on the side? And the Pope found out, and the Pope was going to expose it, and they're like, well, we got to get rid of them. So then they make them die, and then they, oh well, we can't do an autopsy because of these reasons, and oh, we got to change the time of death so it doesn't look too suspicious. And then Calvi writes a letter to the Pope John Paul II, and maybe he was in on it, who knows, but maybe because Calvi was like, hey, the bank's going to collapse because of all this, maybe the Vatican was worried that with the collapse and with Calvi, he was going to come out and expose everything. And they said, well, let's just get rid of him. Take him out. Make it look like a suicide. And maybe it happened to be a coincidence that they just let the banks fail. And then they're like, okay, well, the banks have failed. Calvi killed himself because of that. That's it. Pope died of natural causes. Calvi killed himself because the bank collapsed. Could it have truly been those reasons? But no, I don't. I think there's a deeper truth and a deeper story we're not seeing.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, that's the story. Hopefully we guys gave you the facts. And again, where there's gaps in facts, come to your own conclusions. I
Yeah.
will say the official report technically could be possible, but at a certain point, something has so many gaps that you do have to wonder.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, given the gaps, it's like maybe you're right, maybe you are telling the truth, right? Like it technically is possible that the Pope died of natural causes. Roberto Calvi
Yeah.
was corrupt, but he killed himself because of guilt. But it's just like I don't know. There's just too many weird things that happen. Like because like even again, why are they looking at Roberto Calvi's body again in the '90s? Like why did that even happen? And then when they
Yeah.
did look at it, they're like, because at the time it was ruled as suicide, but in the '90s when they look at his body again, like a full decade after the man's dead, you're like, wait a second,
Yeah.
these wounds are inconsistent when hanging. These bricks were not touched by him, and it's just like, okay, well then what happened that day? So, all right, well that's all I got. I don't know if you had any last minute
No,
thoughts.
that's all I've got. Thank you guys for watching, and again, like I said, make sure you guys comment, like, and subscribe, and check us out on all of our socials. And yeah, in the most guarded city on earth, a pope died alone, and the silence afterward may be the loudest clue of all.